11 attendees. Welcome everyone. I'm Reyes Aguilar, Associate Dean with the University of Utah's Quinney College of Law. For those of you who have been attending these webinars, you recognize my face. I've changed the background. It's a little bit cloudy today in Salt Lake City, so I wanted some sun to make me feel a little bit better. Today's webinar is our Admitted Student Day current student panel. I want to thank our students who have taken time. We were just talking before we got started how it seems like even though technology and being able to have the ability to log in so easily for getting work done, it feels like it's just always on. So I want to thank them for taking time out of their busier days these days for serving on the student information panel. I want to run through kind of how I would like this to work. I'll be introducing the students by name and class, then I'll ask them to do some self-introductions. And so as they're going through the self-introductions, please feel free, attendees, to start posing questions. We have turned on the upvote for the Q&A box so that as people see questions in there, if they like them, they can vote them up so that they get to the top of the list. Also in the webinar chat, our Associate Director, Isabel Moreno, is meeting that should be ending, I think, around 12:30. So she'll join as one of the attendees. And if you have questions for her, she might chime in with web addresses or things like that that we're talking about for the panel discussion today. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that I had a couple of emails suggesting a couple of things as we go through these Zoom webinars. One was actually suggesting a Zoom tour of the building. I want to acknowledge that we actually have virtual building tours from the time the building opened, and that's a couple of years later on the website. So if you go to the admitted student page, in the pictures that scroll across the page at the very top, there's a couple of videos there that you can do a student spaces tour and a building tour. I know that it's not quite like a live tour, but I think those can be helpful. I'll check with our building manager and see if maybe I can go into the building at some point and just walk through the building and can pose questions and see kind of a walkthrough tour if we like. So that was a great idea that you gave me, Ms. Crabtree. So I'll see if I can make that happen. And then I want to also put a plug in for our next Admitted Student Day panel, which is the Financial Aid and Student Affairs Information Panel. That'll be on Thursday at the same time, 12:15 Mountain Standard. So with those announcements, I'd like to get started with the current student panel. We have a first year, second year, and third year student with us today. The third year student is Ryan Alba. The second year student is Rosetti Ferraro. And I want to acknowledge in terms of Rosetti, she's technically in Ryan's class, but she did a joint degree. And so she's gonna be graduating a year later. So she'll be great for questions like that. And then finally, a 1L, Diana Thurman. And so if you could, Ryan, start with the self-introductions and then we'll get rolling.
Sounds great. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Alba. As Dean Aguilar said, I am a 3L here at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. I am originally from Salt Lake City, born and raised, and I actually attended the University of Utah for my undergrad as well in political science. And so as soon as I finished my undergraduate degree, I transitioned straight into the law school. And so, yeah, for me, it's been kind of a 7 years straight of school, but it's been great and I love it. Something that I have been focusing on for my law school studies, I have been focused primarily on litigation and dispute resolution. With that, specifically appellate practice. I've actually been a member of the S.J. Quinney National Moot Court team, and it's been a great experience. And I think it's been the thing that has prepared me the most as I begin to transition to private practice, just in terms of getting me prepared to be a lawyer and being an effective advocate for our clients. I would also just add something kind of unique for me that has made my law school journey different, probably for my peers, is that I'm actually married and I have 2 small kids under the age of 3. So when I started law school, my son was 2 months old. And then we had my daughter in between semesters of my 2L year. So that has been something kind of different and unique, but it's been great. And for me, they've been kind of my source of motivation as I've gone through my law school journey.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Rossetti?
Thank you. As Dean Aguilar said, I am technically a 2L, but I did start with Ryan. I'm a JD MBA, and it's a 4-year program. So I'm in year 3 of 4. I am from Central Washington. I went to Washington State University, majored in economics, and then spent several years as a stockbroker for Vanguard, and moved to Utah for law school. Very much focused on corporate law, specifically with M&A, emerging growth companies, financing deals, all that good stuff, anything startup related. That is the kind of work that I want to do and the work that I do now for a firm that I work for. Before law school, I was a stockbroker. And personal information, I am married, no kids, not LDS. I like alcohol, not an alcoholic, study a lot. That's about it.
Fair enough. Thanks, Rossetti. And Diana?
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess. As Dean Aguilar said, I am Diana Thurgood, and I am a 1L. I am from Salt Lake City, really South Jordan, so I graduated from Bingham High School, go Miners, if anybody here is a Miner. I did my undergraduate work in Deaf Studies at Utah Valley University, and then I went on to do my graduate work. I got my master's in Deaf Studies in Washington, D.C. at Gallaudet University, which is the world's only deaf university. I was fortunate enough, once I was done with graduate work, I worked for Gallaudet, and I traveled all over the country as a recruiter, working with deaf and hard of hearing kids, looking at college as careers. But I knew that I wanted to go to law school. So law school's always been on my radar, and I'm very grateful and lucky to be a part of SJQ. Also, before starting law school, I was a preschool teacher. So I taught preschool at Utah School for the Deaf and Blind. I loved it. I have to admit, I miss seeing 14 little 3-year-olds running at me every morning, just pure joy. It's a little different when you go into the law school, but still happy faces, of course. And in law school, I'm hoping to do disability law. I work within the deaf community, and so disability law and advocacy is always at the forefront of as far as my career life as well. But my wife is deaf, which is a unique aspect. I did come into law school married, and so I get to see the side of the law that comes from a spousal view of the ways in which access are important. And so I hope to further that along while I am at SJQ.
Great, thanks, Diana. And I want to thank them for taking time to kind of prepare for their introductions, but they're all always too modest when I ask the students to do it for themselves. I want to highlight a couple of things for them in that, for example, well, I also want to acknowledge this is the first time we've had all 3 of the panelists be married. Usually I've got a couple of single students or not married. And then just one, so this is pretty great. And then 2 of you, do you guys have kids, Diana?
No, we don't have kids. We have several fur kids, but no babies yet.
Okay, so Ryan's the one with the kid. In regard to Ryan, and I'm sorry if I didn't listen clearly, but Ryan was one of the finalists and won the best oralist competition in the moot court competition. The intramural one here at the law school. So if any of you are interested in appellate advocacy or some of the programming we have there, Ryan will be able to talk a little bit about that. He's also got a range of experience with firms in town. So he's did you split your summer, first year or second year, Ryan?
No, so with my first summer, I was kind of with a smaller local firm who primarily did insurance defense. My 2L year, I was with a large local firm who does everything. And then currently I'm with a national firm. So I've kind of had experience at all different sizes of firms and things like that. Okay, so the last panel, we had was included PDO, the clinical programs. There was a lot of questions that people had about the span of experiences available in Salt Lake. So you might get some questions on that. Rossetti is also our relatively newly elected editor-in-chief for the Law Review.
highly competitive position, lots of work involved with that. So I want to both congratulate her and acknowledge the experience she can talk about as she's gearing up both as a junior staff member and then pursuing a joint degree. I think you alluded to this, but it's an MBA, JD MBA that you're pursuing as a joint degree, right, Rossetti?
Right, yes.
Okay. And then finally, Diana, she has been one of the leaders in first year class. She also happens to be the first year representative on the SBA, the student government, for the students. And it's been a challenge this year, to say the least, as a result of the pressure that has been put on the SBA to be a conduit of information that, as decisions are coming through the university or the law school, informing classmates, polling classmates on things like the credit, no credit grading system that we're going to be using for this spring semester now that classes are online. So I want to commend all of them for the work that they've been doing. And we've got the first set of questions that have come up. First one's for you, Rossetti. It's Emily Klott, and she's a Washingtonian herself. So she'd like to hear what your experience was like moving to and transitioning to Utah.
I'll be perfectly honest, Utah was not on my list of schools to apply to. The reason I applied was because the application was free, and I had a friend who just started working for the University of Utah. And so during the application process, once I got all of my acceptances, my husband and I decided, why don't we go visit all of these cities? So we took 3 weeks off and literally just traveled all over the country, visiting schools, talking to people. And my friend told me, oh, why don't you just come here? Worst case scenario, like, you know, at least we get to see you. So we ended up here and we loved it. It was very strange. It was very unexpected, but we just, the biggest advice that I got from people was to go to the school where you can, located in a city where you can see yourself living at forever. And for us, that ended up being Salt Lake City. It's an adjustment, to say the least. I think when we moved here, you probably shouldn't be ordering beer at restaurants because it tastes different than what you're used to. Things do close down on Sundays here and there, but I don't know, I guess whatever it is you're looking for, you'll be able to find it. I mean, we have a community of people who came from all over the country, all over the world, that's here for jobs. And like, we have our own like group of friends, and we meet them out in bars. We, you know, go play games, whatever, we go skiing every weekend. So it's an adjustment, but I wouldn't say it's any different than moving elsewhere.
Great. Diana, you have a question from Nikki Cowtree, and it's how do you balance the demanding 1L workload with spending time with your wife, and what has the adjustment been like? And I'll follow up a little bit with in your observation of your wife, what has the adjustment been like for both of you?
That is an excellent question, and one that I wish I would have asked prior to entering law school, just to get a more holistic view of what it would be like. What I would say is, the last semester coming into the law school and having just an immense support system from the school itself with faculty and staff, that made a huge difference. But I noticed that, and just from like an undergraduate and graduate degree, I don't study well at home. So I would commit myself to getting to the law school around 5:30 or 6 every morning, get a couple hours of studying in before my first class at 9. Lunch break, take a break for a few minutes, finish any afternoon homework that I would have, and then I would be at the law school again until another 5:30, 6:30 or so. But what I would do was always aim to have any reading done, any case briefs that I needed to do, make sure everything was out of the way so that when I went home, I could just be home. And that was the strategy that I took last semester. And it was good because it gave me time to adjust. I got to connect with my peers, work with faculty and staff as I needed at the law school. But at the end of the first semester, I was burnt out. I was tired. And I knew that I needed more time at home to find a balance. And so I've adjusted some of my studying. And then with what's happening right now. Obviously, we're significantly more time at home, but at the beginning of the semester, I just decided that I would create more space at home, that I could be with my wife and say, hey, come and pay the bills sitting next to me while I'm doing a case brief or something along those lines. And that's been a better balance. And so for anyone coming in 1L year, I suggest know yourself, what you study, how best you study. Do you study well with others? Do you do a group? Is it better at home? Play with that and be open to being flexible, and talk with that with your spouse or whoever is in your life that you will be balancing that life with. And from her perspective, last semester was very difficult because I was gone a significant amount of time. But the home time that we had set aside was ideal. We knew we could just be together. And then we talked about it at the end of the semester, and her wanting to be more involved or being able to sit next to me while I'm doing homework. And so we made that modification. And if you have a great spouse or a significant other in your life, just talk with them. Prepare yourselves. Know that it is time consuming, but it is significantly worth it. And any odd balances that you might have right now can kind of work themselves out as you get used to and acclimated to law school, because it's a process. But you have a great support system through the school who always encourages you to do that. And because I took their advice, I kind of navigated that for myself.
Great, thanks. I'm going to pitch another part of that question to Ryan as it relates to kids. What did you and your wife think about as you thought about going into law school and having kids while in school?
Yeah, we definitely talked about it quite a bit and kind of had to do the same thing, just echoing what Diana said, of talking about what both of us would be going through, me as the student and my wife as the spouse, and what kind of our expectations were. And what we tried to really do is the same thing that Diana said, really figure out what works best for us. For me, it was kind of primarily studying at the law school so that when I came home, I could have that time with the kids and with my wife. And so you kind of do have to figure that out, but it is possible. I mean, I think that especially with kids being kind of my motivating factor to go to law school, it's been really fun because there would be times where I could study at home and be reading a little case brief or something like that, and then be able to deviate for 10 minutes and play with my kids and just have fun for a moment and then go back to studying. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing that Diana said. You just kind of have to figure out your schedule and make time for it. I think that's important. Make time for your partner, make time for your kids if you have them, but also make sure that you are getting enough study time in.
I think what I heard from Diana was there's time to be able, if you have it, to study at home, to have your spouse around or what have you. But with kids, I think it's a little bit different. And is studying at home with two young children just kind of off limits just because of the noise and distractions?
I think it definitely depends on their age. So my 1L year, our son was still just 2 months, and so he was primarily sleeping a lot. So there would be times where if I needed to, I could study from home. But definitely as he got older and as we had to, I had to change my schedule and primarily focus at the school. And so, yeah, I did put in a lot more time at the school, which is really nice because our building does have a lot of resources for studying, a lot of study space available. And so what I would primarily do is try and go in early, just like Diana, get a really good study session in so that when I came home, I was just primarily home. I had finished my studies or whatever I need to for coursework. That way the kids weren't as much of a distraction.
Okay, great. And just to acknowledge that as students you have or will have 24/7 access to the building, your student ID card serves as key to the building generally. And then also to the lockdown floors where only students and faculty are allowed, which are floors 3 through 5. Next question is from Andrew Summers. What kind of experience do any of you have with the second year graduate assistantship program? I'll edit that a little bit because he's mentioned the second year. I'm assuming what he's talking about is the assured graduate assistantships that accompany some of our merit on entrance scholarship. Were any of you assured graduate assistants as part of your scholarships? And have you been graduate assistants? Ryan, I thought you were at PBI. I thought you were a student director at PBI.
I was not.
Okay, I'm sorry. So sorry, Andrew, the students don't have an experience to draw on for those. I will be talking about the graduate assistantship program during the financial aid session on Thursday. Shoot me an email if you like, Andrew, and we'll get you in touch with one of our current participants if you like. Next question is from Samantha. Rossetti, well, what's the process like for joining Law Review, and is Law Review the only journal at SJQ?
So SJQ is very unique in that we do have a very, very small class size in comparison to other schools. And because of that, it's really only sustainable to have one journal. And so we have a flagship Law Review, and that is it. We do have specific issues within the Law Review, like environmental, because we are a ranked environmental program, and social justice. That could change. In terms of joining Law Review, things this year are a little different. So I will talk about it traditionally. Traditionally, it's about 50% to grades. So whatever your cumulative grades is at the end of 1L year, that is worth 50%. The other 50% is a submission process called a write-on and a blue book exercise. And so this citations we do in the legal field has to comport to what's called a blue book. So it's just this set of rules that we have, and it's this little blue book that you'll have. And so there's a quiz basically that you'd have to just look through citations, make sure they're correct. And then the other one, you actually have to write like a 10-page paper. And then all of that is graded anonymously. So we don't know who is applying. We don't know if you wrote out at all. It's just a number. And then that is the other 50%. So we combine those and then we look to see where people are. And then we select, I believe right now it's the top 30. So you have that option at the end of your 1L year. And then you also have the option to do it at the end of your 2L year. If you have any interest in being a member of the board, then I would suggest doing it your 1L year because the election process happens during your 2L year. So if you don't do well, your 1L year, there's hope. I'm not that great of a student, but I spent a lot of time writing my development, and that worked out well for me. So while there is a significant emphasis on grades, we're making sure that those who struggle with exams also have the opportunity to write on. So I wouldn't focus too much on that. I mean, obviously take it seriously, but don't be discouraged if you think that your grades aren't good enough, because quite frankly, you don't know how everyone else is doing. So write on anyway. Happy to answer more questions regarding Law Review if there are any more.
How does the election or appointment process work for the editorial staff if you want to become an editorial, a member of the editorial board your third year?
So I believe we did in January of your second year. You just sit in a room with everybody in Law Review, and there are positions there, and before that meeting, you kind of indicate what position you'd like to run for. And so a lot of it happens behind the scenes of people just tapping each other, say, hey, what are you running for? Or, hey, we think you would be really good for this job. Would you consider running for that position? And that's kind of how I ended up as editor-in-chief, was just a group of people saying, hey, you don't have kids. You should run for this. And so you make a speech, you kind of outline what your plan is for the journal for the year, and then it's just a voting process. I mean, obviously you have to be in Law Review for this to happen, and I believe it's just majority rules.
Is it both 2Ls and 3Ls that are serving on Law Review that vote, or is it just the 2Ls who are advancing? How does that work?
Just the 2Ls. And so, in addition to being smart, I think collegiality and making sure that people like you and respect you is important. So I would very much keep that in mind while you're in law school.
Fair enough. Thanks, Rossetti. Next question is from Alexa, and it's to all three of you. I'd like to hear from each of you, and actually Rossetti brings in the perspective of her cohort in the business school. It's how do you each feel about the small class sizes? Are there any concerns you have with having a smaller alumni network? Ryan, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this. Personally, I love the smaller class sizes for two primary reasons. First, you really do get to know your classmates very well. I think when I started, we had 99. Rossetti, you can correct me. We're in the 90s for our class size. But it was really nice because you really get to know everybody very well, and that helps you study, that helps you network within your class. But it makes you realize that you're not alone in this journey. And so you really do kind of develop this camaraderie with your class. If it were any larger, I don't know that that would be as possible or as easy as it is with the smaller class size. The second reason I really like it is because having a smaller class size, you actually have the ability to seek out faculty more easily. The faculty at SJ Quinney primarily has an open door policy. And so because of the small class sizes, you're welcome to go visit with a professor if you need help, if you have questions, if you just want to even talk, which makes it really nice. Again, if we had any larger class sizes, I don't know that that would be possible, or else there would be kind of a line out the professor's door. But I've really enjoyed the small class size.
How about you, Diana?
Yes, so I would love to just echo a lot of Ryan's sentiments. Having a small class size has been beneficial just from the sheer nature of coming into to something that you've never done before, and it can be scary and intimidating, and it can also be, you know, really amazing. And so having the opportunity to have the ups and downs with people who are going through it with you is really important. Also, just in the classroom, so your 1 year, you're all taking the same classes, all your core classes. And so you get really used to interacting with people who are in your group. But it's nice because when you have questions on cases or when you're doing any type of group work, you have the ability to connect with them already because it's so small, but then you can connect with the professor. And I have been in classes where it's the lecture style where you have like a couple hundred people in a class and you feel like a number on a sheet. And in class, it's really more about the professors know you, they take the time to get to know your name, they want to see you during office hours, they want to help you. I've had professors give phone numbers, say, call me over the weekend. So having small class sizes is really just all about coming together as a family. And SJQ is a family, and you'll feel that and you'll notice that. And then about the alumni part of that, what I have come to appreciate and love is during the year when there's alumni events, whether it's through an organization or through specifically just alumni getting together. There's so many ways to connect with people, and the community is so small that I actually appreciate it more. I've come to make good networking connections with people that I didn't think I would have otherwise, just given the nature of the field that I want to go into, which is disability, which is a very, you know, niche field of law. And so I think it's wonderful. And there's been no negatives that I've seen from either side of those, at least from my 1L year.
Rossetti, I think you bring in the perspective of having another campus college to compare it to, so your MBA cohort, but also coming in from, you know, a competitive marketplace with your financial background. Yeah, what are your thoughts on having a small alumni base and the experience as a student?
Well, I've had a great experience. My MBA cohort is also quite smaller actually. There's 65 of us. And Brian is right. I think we had mid-90s for our class. So I think Diana and Ryan talked about the academic portion. I really love it. But in terms of alumni network, I came here not knowing anyone. And today I'm pretty confident in saying that I know a lot of people. The Utah Alumni Network is strangely very, very, very strong. Because I didn't do well my first semester, I changed my strategy and thought, oh, what if every week I have lunch with someone, or maybe 2 lunches. 1, because they'll pay for it, and 2, it's good to know people. And So every week for the last 2 years, I've had a lunch with either an attorney or somebody who is a graduate of the MBA program. And it was very helpful just in terms of getting to know other people and getting any kind of leads for internships or jobs. No one has ever said no, which I found very surprising. And outside of Utah, I've actually met up with other SJQ alumni. I spent my summer in LA last year, and there were lawyers there where I was downtown, and I literally just would go through the list of firms that I would see like in the buildings and look through who's in the office in LA and send an email saying, hi, I am a student at SJQ. Any chance we can have lunch? And so the network is widespread, and the people are kind. And I think it's the understanding that when one day we are in a position to take a student out to lunch and show them the ropes and answer whatever questions they have, that's kind of what's expected of us. But I would say that it's been wonderful, and it's one of the reasons why I chose this school. And having the small class sizes, I think I have learned so much more. And if I ever needed help, there are professors who are more than willing to help me outside of school hours to make sure that I understand.
I want to observe that what Rossetti mentioned in regard to the professors. The vast majority of our professors came to Salt Lake and the University of Utah from out of state, and in some cases out of the country. And I think they're particularly sensitive to assisting students who may want to be going elsewhere after graduation, and in particular with things like judicial clerkships. And so they can be a terrific resource in the job search and connecting you with folks who are outside Utah or Salt Lake Valley generally. Next question is from Paris Wagner. It's a person coming in from out of town. So she has been unable to visit Salt Lake. Do any of you recommend good areas to live, specifically for someone who would be living alone? Tough question because you're all married.
So I live in Sugar House, Mill Creek area, which is just about 15 minutes from the law school. I love it. It's a beautiful area, but anywhere within like a 15-20 minute radius of Salt Lake or the law school, you're going to have really good neighbors, good people, good housing opportunities. But even if you go down further south, you really can't go wrong. Utah has a lot of great housing opportunities, just because family is very important here given the culture of Utah. So there's a lot of people looking for roommates or looking for someone to rent out a mother-in-law basement, something along those lines. So if you go onto Craigslist or KSL.com, KSL Housing, which is like the Craigslist of Salt Lake or Utah, you'll find a lot of people seeking a roommate or even just posting individual apartments, and you probably can't go wrong.
I live downtown and I really like it. Granted, I do have a roommate, so I don't live alone and he pays for rent. But we are walking distance to the basketball stadium. I believe it's the Utah Jazz. And we're walking
Says the Sonics fan.
to a lot of places here, and it's very central. It takes me about 10 minutes to get to school. But there are a lot of I would suggest if you plan to study at the school to live closer. But I do know that there are some people who have like intense commutes, so that maybe like a 40-minute track ride. So I mean, you can live anywhere. It's very easy to get around Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I would just add maybe also checking out the on-campus housing. That is where I live and I love it. I mean, I'm literally 5 minutes away from the law school, which is very convenient. And so I know that that is another really good option. But just like Rossetti and Diana have said, I mean, anywhere in the valley is awesome to live. And I think that the other nice thing is the TRAX line that we have. Literally the stop is right across the street from campus. So if you can't find anywhere close or maybe not have like a car or other means of transportation, the TRAX line is right there, and anywhere along there would be a good place to live as well.
What I would like to add is if you're considering us and you're coming from a major metropolitan area like New York or San Francisco and you don't have a car, Salt Lake is a commuter community in the sense that it is tougher to get all around just on public transportation. So I think it's helpful to know that. But if you are coming from a car-driven community like LA, parts of Chicago, Atlanta, you would be pleasantly surprised at how far away you can live from the campus and how relatively short the commute time is. There's a really good highway system. In addition, there is, as part of the student fees you pay, a Trax Pass that is part of your student ID. And so you have all public transportation covered throughout the year. And so your ID just serves as a public transportation pass. I want to say also, like all urbanists, I think in the US right now, housing, affordable housing is becoming a challenge. And I have heard from students that about, kind of the quick rate at which rent is going up. There's a lot of construction for apartment buildings, especially in the downtown area and the area that Diana mentioned, the Sugar House area and areas adjacent to the university. Some of those projects are starting to complete, but the rents are going up. And I think with what's happening right now, it's going to be hard to get a measure with where that's going to drive housing costs in Utah generally, in Salt Lake in particular. But I think that's going to be true among a lot of major metropolitan areas in the United States. And I think our rental prices are really competitive when you're looking at other kind of 2 million person metropolitan areas around the US. But I do want to acknowledge that affordable housing has been a conversation piece among the legislature and the mayor's race in the last few months. Samantha has a question about what is the one thing you would change about SJQ or your law school experience in general? Brian, with kind of 3 years of perspective under your belt, what do you think? I'll ask you guys to go in reverse order here.
I think that as far as my law school experience, I just think one of the most important things you can do is kind of, even now as you're preparing, determine for yourself what success in law school means. Because there's no right or wrong way really of doing law school. There's different paths and they can lead to different opportunities. And I think that one of the most important things that you can do, and maybe looking back retrospectively that I wish I'd done maybe sooner, is just defining what success or what was important to my law school experience. I think that I really figured that out after my first semester and have been able to have a really great journey through law school because of that. Maybe I wish I had answered this question, again, in your shoes, kind of defining what I wanted to do or what I wanted specifically to be the end result. But for me, I think that'd be the one thing, is just kind of determining now what success is for you or what your end goal is. I think that's the most important thing that you can do.
Great. Rossetti, your thoughts?
I think academically, there are classes that are not offered every year, they're offered every other year. So you do have to plan well in advance. If there's a class that's on the schedule that you're interested in, probably a good bet to take it now rather than wait next year, because it's probably not going to be there. And I know that that's done to try to give us a wider array of the types of classes, because we're such a small school. So that's something that I would change, but I also understand the limitations to that. In terms of law school experience, I wish that I would have communicated more to the people in my life before I started law school that I'm gonna disappear for a few years, and to not be concerned that I'll be okay, you just won't hear from me. Because I don't know how the others have experienced this, but for me, it really has been like, I kind of just dropped off the face of the earth. And I have friends who would send me text messages or emails saying, where have you been? Why aren't you going to this trip with us? So that was pretty eye-opening to realize that I have not talked to a lot of people that I normally talk to pretty often. But I think that if you're aware of that, and if you want to prioritize certain people in your life, then you definitely will. But just keep an eye on it.
Good. How about you, Diana?
There's nothing that I would change about SJQ. I genuinely love the law school. Everybody there is phenomenal, the professors, the deans. So there's nothing that I would change on that front. The only thing I would change is probably the perspective that I have for myself going in. I think Ryan touched on that as setting, what does success look like, but also giving yourself some kindness. A lot of people coming into law school have very similar personality types, and it's easy to get down on yourself when you have a lot of people competing at a very high level, and just be kind. Remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your classmates, take moments away for some self-care, because it is consuming. It's new, it's different, it's a shift from anything that you've ever done before. So just allow yourself to enjoy the experience. Know there's going to be ups and downs, but that you have excellent resources and to go take advantage of them. I think initially my first semester I didn't. I tried to just swallow it and put on a happy face, and I let my stress build up in a way that I shouldn't. And that by the end of the semester where I said I needed to make a change, I took the time to evaluate and readjust, and that helped me the most. So if you can do that periodically while you're in your first semester, most definitely check in with others and just allow yourself some kindness and to step away when you need to, because it's important for your mental health as you're going through law school, because the longevity is needed.
Great. I'm going to keep you on the spot. Callan asked a question about COVID-19. I think your role on SVA gives you a little bit more insight than some of the other students. It's basically, how do you think the law school has handled the current COVID-19 pandemic? How quickly classes moved online, and do you feel like the school has prioritized your well-being?
Yes, absolutely. So the school by the end of a Friday, spring break going into the next week, classes were online, up and going within just a few days. I was very impressed with the ways in which professors were communicating with us, reaching out to students, making sure technology was available, internet concerns. Just, I think the human side of individuals came out immediately, and that instead of just making a very academic transition to get things flowing, which was done, it was also taking into consideration that everybody's lives have been impacted, and it's been a drastic change in a lot of ways. And that's continued throughout class. I have all of my classes online, and of the core classes, the three main ones, each professor has taken a different approach to how they're connecting with students, reaching out to make sure they're doing okay. One professor has set up where class is pre-recorded a little bit with lecture, and then we come in and we have our conversations, go through the cases, reflect, and then allow for 10 or 15 minutes just to connect with one another, because you do get close with your classmates, and it's hard to connect virtually always. So allowing and allotting that time has been nice. I've also had a professor who has taken some of the readings out, and so allowing us to be just more concentrated on the text of certain cases rather than covering a whole slew of them at once. And that has been better for the online course. And so I have just been impressed. I think the law school has been communicating with us consistently, not in an inundating way, but purely to be informative and to be engaging and genuinely checking on students' well-being from day one. So I've been grateful. No complaints there.
How about you, Ryan, or Rossetti, anything to contribute to that? Ryan, in particular, I want to ask also, how is this impacted kind of wrapping up law school and getting ready for the bar? I mean, looking at the big picture, what are the various observations you have on those issues?
Yeah, this was not the end of law school that I expected. But just like Diana said, first of all, I do think that the school responded very well. And specifically the faculty, all of my professors, when we made the transition to go strictly online, every professor at the beginning of class asked us all how we were doing, and just kind of had a normal conversation and what was our spring break like, and what are some of the obstacles we're facing right then, and genuinely asked us if we ever needed help to reach out to them. And I do feel that way. I do feel like the faculty has done that. And then kind of, as I look forward to, like you were saying, Dean Aguilar, preparing for the bar, I feel like this has actually been a unique opportunity for me to transition in probably what I'll do to study for the bar. A lot of the bar prep courses are primarily online. And so I do feel like kind of looking ahead, I know there's still a question as to whether or not the Utah bar is going to be postponed or what is going to happen there. But I feel like kind of just switching to this platform more online has helped me kind of get ready for this summer and kind of get a glimpse of what studying remotely is going to look like as I prepare for the bar. So while this hasn't been the ideal close of law school, it's been great. And it's worked out really, I think, a lot better than individuals thought.
You have anything to add, Rosetti?
I would say that, so we did have to change things with the write-on process for law review. And I've been in communication with the deans regarding that, because we do want to make sure that we're giving people more time, because it sounds like people will need more time considering the changes that's been happening, but also to ensure that it's not putting anyone at a disadvantage in terms of being able to put that on their resume. And so the human aspect is definitely there. The compassion is there. The speediness of response is there. I have paper due today and I needed an extension and it was granted, which is, I feel like for law school, that's kind of unheard of. So, I mean, people here really are wonderful and they do want to see you succeed, and they will consider all aspects of it to make sure that it's not just a short-term fix, but it also doesn't hurt you in the long run.
Good. The thing that I want to add is first a commendation to our IT staff. None of the successes we've achieved in the transition we've made from a live setting in our classrooms and administrative duties to everything remotely and online has gone, to me, incredibly smooth. And it's due to the leadership of our director for the IT office, a gentleman by the name of Mark Beekhausen, and his entire staff, including the gentleman who's setting up the webinar today, Lance, and Lance Finch. And we're really lucky to have the resources in place with the technology and the personnel to have pulled this off. With that acknowledgement, it's been bumpy. I mean, one of the most controversial challenges we faced is the faculty needing to decide how to go about making this as least impactful on the evaluation of students, but being very sensitive to the pressures and the anxieties that were created by having to go online. And that led to a vote of having all classes graded as credit, non-credit. And that was not uniformly voted on. Well, the students didn't have a vote, but they were polled about their positions. And it was about a 60-40 split among the students. And so there's, a substantial part of the student population that would have preferred not to be in the credit, no credit mandatory voting that we're in. And the faculty struggled greatly with making the decision. But that is one of the challenges, that with the unanticipated nature of this transition, we wanted to make sure that, especially with regard to the mental health of students and the pressures that they would feel in this entirely new grading and learning environment, and how there was going to be an even greater chasm between students who were in positions to be able to study without distraction and could afford the widest broadband support at home and had the technology, versus students who weren't in those positions. That the faculty and the administration tried to make a decision that was most beneficial to all, but recognizing not all would be pleased with that decision. And it was something we struggled with. And I want to acknowledge that it's not a perfect transition, and there are those who are struggling with some of the decisions made. I think it's only fair that you as students considering this know that not all decisions are made and not all decisions are uniformly appreciated by the students. Next question is a demographic. Andrew is asking, what's the age range of students at SJQ? 21 to 54. That's a quick one I can answer. Andrew's a 22-year-old, and when he enters as a 1L, and he feels like he might be a little bit out of his depth as an older, coming into an older primarily married student body. What's your perspective as older married students in talking to Andrew?
Well,
Personally,
I'm
I
20.
think that, oh, go ahead, Rosetti.
I'm 28. I am not on the high end of the student body, but I feel like I am the oldest sometimes. So they do these things called a bar review, which I think every Friday they pick a different bar in the city, and that's usually where all of the younger single people go. And I go, and for some reason I end up being the one who's responsible for everyone. So just because there's a 54-year-old, don't assume that everybody is on the high end of the range. I think that the average is significantly lower than that. I don't think you'll be out of your depth. If any, I would use that to your advantage. Like me not having children is a significant advantage in my opinion, because I don't have the same responsibilities that Ryan does. And so if this was the MBA program, I would say, yes, you are significantly disadvantaged not having any kind of work experience, but because it's the law program, I don't think it puts you in any kind of disadvantage. If any, you're in a good place. You have a lot less responsibilities than people like Ryan who have 20 kids.
What's your perspective, Ryan?
Yeah, I would just echo with what Rosetti has said. I think that you're definitely not disadvantaged. The average age is a lot lower than you would assume. Dean Aguilar probably has that readily at hand. But I think that is kind of one of the nice things, again, going back to the smaller class sizes, is that you really do get to know everybody regardless of age. And I honestly don't even think, I mean, especially in our class, I don't even think about age of our classmates. You're just, classmates, and you get to know each other. I know we had in our class a 19-year-old who started in our class, and he was just as involved with everybody and got to know everybody. So you're definitely not disadvantaged. And I think that's kind of, again, one of the unique things about law school is, everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everybody is a different age. And that adds to your experience of learning the law and seeing things from a different perspective. So you're definitely not disadvantaged. You will have a great experience, and you'll get to know your classmates really well.
Diana, you had the unique experience of, it looks to me that you went to Gaudet pretty quickly after you finished your undergrad. So you were kind of that transitioning right into a graduate program. And then it's been a few years since you graduated from Gaudet, coming into law school. You want to talk a little bit about what the differences in terms of your age entering either program were?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to grad school right after my undergrad, I graduated in December and went right into August. And it was, I was grateful in the sense because I followed along the line of what my career was, deaf studies and deaf studies. So that was beneficial. But noticing that I had taken time off from already having a master's and coming into law school, I value my work experience and the opportunity to meet people and to engage individuals. But the transition, I don't think would say it was any different, actually. I think law school is of its own nature. You can't quite prepare for it in the way that you think you need to or will. And so going in right after your undergrad or taking time off, coming in, several years later, there's just no quite way to actually prepare for law school in the best way possible. And so the transition is more about you just getting acclimated into the school and being familiar with your needs and getting to work with classmates. And you'll find that, like everybody has mentioned, it's actually a benefit to have a wide range of students. I've noticed even just in property this semester, people talking about buying a house and what does that look like? Some of the landlord-tenant issues, things that I have not had to deal with, even though I'm only 29 and married, also not on the high end. But you get perspective from people from all walks of life, and it enhances the conversations in the class. Not only do the cases become more relevant and engaging, but you also feel like the information is sticking because you have people with real world experience. And so the diversity is actually really great. And the transition, no matter where you're coming from, is going to be a transition. And so as long as you are connecting with your classmates and with the professors and the staff and faculty, it's going to make it an easier transition, no matter your age or coming directly from or taking time off. It's just a transition, I think.
Great. Andrew, I also want to say we really expanded our out-of-state recruiting. One of the things that's resulted in this year is having a much younger applicant pool. And up to this point, in terms of the people who have committed, which is a little bit more than half of what our goal target for the commitments at this stage, the average age is just under 25. The average age at entrance for the last many years has been about 27. So I will say it looks like the class that's entering is going to be a little bit younger on average than what we've seen in the past. Alexa is asking, what is everyone's favorite thing about SJQ, and how has SJQ specifically helped you pursue your goals? Rosetta, you want to get a start on that?
I would say if I want to do anything, I can go do it. I mean, you know, within reason. We have to do an externship, and I wanted to do one with soccer. I hate soccer, but that seemed like an interesting place to be, to see what it's like to be in house council there. And so I met someone who is the general counsel of the soccer team. And so I'm spending a few hours a week there right now. So I mean, it's a cool experience. It's something that wasn't on anyone's agenda or on the table, but really if there was something that I wanted to do, I can go talk to someone and they will help me figure out how I can do it. If there's any type of research project I'm interested in, any type of class that I was interested in, like, they were willing to work with me to help make that happen. And I think that's quite unique here because of the small student body. Like with Georgetown, I don't think you can do that with 650 people in an entering class.
Fair enough. Ryan?
I think one of my favorite things has been honestly the adjunct professors. That's kind of another unique thing. For your 2L and 3-year classes, in addition to tenured professors that we have at the law school, we also have a really good adjunct group of professors that come in who typically are practicing attorneys in the field that they're teaching. And I have really liked that. It kind of speaks again to our alumni network. But just like Rossetti was saying, you have opportunities to meet individuals and network with them, even in this type of setting. And that's been something I've really liked about my law school experience. I've been able to have really awesome, not only tenured professors again, but adjunct professors who are actively practicing in the specific field that they're teaching. And they have been awesome. They've been amazing. And they have been great resources as I have, moved from their class into my law school experience in other years.
Great. Anything to add, Diana?
Yeah, for me, what I've loved the most is that from literally the ground up, the law school is very much about diversity and inclusion. And that's a core of who I am as a person and the fields that I want to pursue. And so having, even just in the building, gender neutral bathrooms for the LGBTQ community, up to the dean giving a presentation during our orientation week about biases, racial bias, sexual orientation, and just having hard conversations that you're going to have and they're going to pop up, especially in the legal field when it comes to constitutional law or other things like that. And so developing civility and respect and kindness towards a diverse group of individuals and all coming together and having conversations about it has been one of the most rewarding and exciting things about law school. And seeing that the professors take it to heart and into the classroom, that's made the experience of just going to class and engaging in the conversations easier and also just exciting. And I've really appreciated that coming from the school.
Great. It's almost 15 after. We have time for one more question. I'm going to go with Dylan's question. Andrew, we can get you in touch with students who be able to answer questions about tracks, what have you, or shoot me or Isabel an email, and we can talk about coming to school either without a car or other commuting. But Dylan Raymond's asking Rossetti, can you speak a little bit more about your experience in pursuing the joint JD MBA and the pros and cons you've experienced in that pursuit?
Of course, I love the dual degree program, except for the part where I am not graduating and Ryan is, because we did start together. Pros and cons. So the MBA program is very, it's different. It's very, very, very different than the law program. One is they do value work experience, so that is something to keep in mind. And the other is like the curriculum is very different. And so I applied, I think, near the end of the first semester of my 1L year to the MBA program. And so I was doing, studying for the GMAT and doing that interview process around Thanksgiving. So that was kind of a handful. I would just keep that in mind. But the first year is law, the second year is purely MBA, and then the third and fourth year is a mix of both until you have to finish both requirements to be able to graduate. I would say that the biggest con is that I don't get to graduate with either class. So like Ryan was in my class, I don't graduate with him. My MBA cohort is graduating this year as well, and I don't graduate with them. So I'm expecting my next year to be a little lonely, but I've also made new friends, and I think that would be great. The MBA program is very generous with their scholarships too. So my entire second year was paid for, and then I do have a lot of scholarship money that flowed from there to my to this year as a law student. I would say the biggest pro is that it opens up your network pretty significantly. The biggest con would be if you know for sure that you want to be a lawyer. The MBA is not something, I don't think it really adds that much value, because in every interview I've had, especially with big law in the coastal areas like LA, San Francisco, New York, I've had to defend the decision to get an MBA because their worry is you can go make more money doing things that's not law related. Why are you coming here and wasting our time if that is your end goal? And so you better have a really, really good answer for that, because that question will come up on both sides. And so for me, it made sense because of what I wanted to do, because of my interest in corporate law, because of my interest in startups and financings. I could justify my decision to get a JD MBA. So the biggest thing to keep in mind is it is a 4-year commitment. You can't leave one without the other, because both sides are taking concessions and the amount of credits that you have. Happy to answer more questions about that. I will leave my email in the chat for those who are interested.
Great, thanks, Rossetti. The one thing I would like to add in pursuing any of our joint degrees is strategizing the use of our flat rate tuition. One of the things that's unique to the law school and the medical school here at the University of Utah is the professional schools have flat rate tuition, which means you pay one tuition amount for taking up to 16 credits per semester, or in summer up to 8 credits. And you pay that amount regardless if you take very few credits also. So you'll want to make sure that in years where you may be taking both JD classes and other program requirement classes, that for the number of JD credits that you're taking, you get as close to that 8 as possible to take advantage of that flat rate cost on the tuition. The other programs are billed, programs are billed at by credit hour tuition schedule. So with that, I very, very much want to thank Ryan, Rossetti, and Diane for sharing a part of their day with us. You guys did a great job, and I appreciate you taking time out for that. Also, thanks, Lance. You're off the pictures. On Thursday is our financial aid and student affairs panel discussion. That's going to be the last of our admitted student day, virtual day. And same time, same web address, and have a wonderful, safe day. Stay healthy, everyone, and we'll see you in a little bit. Bye.